Hello, welcome to the GenXplainers podcast. We have a special episode today. Perhaps you've heard the filmmaker, artist David Lynch has passed. So today I thought we'd get the panel together to talk about, briefly talk about his impact culturally and personally for each of us. With that, let me introduce the panel. Alan and Mike and Chrissy, you've met before. But we have a special guest, Chris, also joining us to talk about David Lynch. So let's just start out very quickly about some background of David Lynch, if you haven't heard of David Lynch. American filmmaker with a very unique vision and uncompromising creative vision. Well, he started as a painter, and he got to a project where he wanted his painting to move. So he did some animation, stop animation, started getting into that. And then he started making short films, and he got an AFI grant, and he used that to create his first feature, Eraserhead. So before we start sort of going through the work, why don't each of you just talk about your introduction, maybe, to David Lynch? For me, it was probably seeing The Elephant Man, which is one of his films, not knowing anything. I was at an age where I didn't understand what directors were, so I didn't notice the direction and say, this director, and I don't know. I said, this movie's weird. But how about you guys, as far as your first sort of encounter with David Lynch, if you remember?
Yeah, well, I could definitely say it was Elephant Man for me. And not, again, like you, I was way too young to know really what a director's role is. I think that it came out in 70 something, 70, I can't remember the year.
80.
Oh, 80. Okay.
Yeah.
So for me, I think my recollection of it is that I only saw it for the first time on TV. The family actually watched it together, which was kind of strange now in retrospect, thinking of my family watching David Lynch together. But I do remember thinking that film in particular had a lot of impact on me.
I am not an elephant. I am not an animal. I am a human being.
How about Chris?
Yeah, I can guarantee you the first Lynch I ever saw was Dune in the theater open day. And it's still one of my 10 favorite films. It could actually be 3 of my favorite films because I've seen at least 6 different versions and 3 of them are really, really good. But immediately after that, I went back and I found Eraserhead. I mean, I'm 11 at this point.
Wow.
And I found The Elephant Man, which really messed me up. Way more than any of his other films. But I really didn't become a Lynch acolyte until Twin Peaks. And that changed everything about how I see art and film and television and storytelling in general.
Yeah. How about Chrissy?
My first David Lynch was Eraserhead. I remember renting it probably, I was probably around 16, 83 from our local video store and watching it on my best friend's big console TV. And I think it was one of the first films I saw that made me realized I like weird stuff. And I like gloomy men with big hair. and I remember finding it a little bit boring, a little bit disturbing. And only much later when I had a baby did I realize that's exactly what having a baby is like.
How about you, Al?
So I can't really say for sure whether I saw Blue Velvet first or Eraserhead. So, Mike, I saw Eraserhead with you, so you would have more. I think I saw Blue Velvet before Eraserhead, but you would know better than I.
Well, I don't know what order you saw things in. I know that I saw Blue Velvet before Eraserhead.
Yeah, and I saw Blue Velvet in the theaters.
So 1977 was Eraserhead. I didn't see Eraserhead until a few years after I saw Blue Velvet in 86. So I probably saw it like 87, like very soon after. I do remember it was very strange. This is my initial reaction to it. But I couldn't take my eyes off. And it was it was eye-opening, you know. Like a lot of times I would see David Lynch films, I come out of them with a completely different perspective on the world.
Definitely.
And on filmmaking for sure.
The reactions seem to be that some people love it, some people hate it, some have violent, repulsive reactions. It would be interesting, I think, to everyone, what sort of reaction were you thinking of? Do you want people to have?
The reaction, the Eraserhead is Eraserhead, you know, and it was meant to be just that way. And however people react to it is you know, is fine. And it wasn't that I just went about it haphazardly. Eraserhead was a real definite, you know, thing in my head, but I didn't think about how people were going to react to it.
So yeah, 77 was Eraserhead. I'm going to quickly run through. 80 Elephant Man, 84 was Dune, 86 Blue Velvet, 1990 Wild at Heart, and then Twin Peaks the series was 1991, 90 to 91. Then 92 was Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me, 97 Lost Highway, 99 The Straight Story, 2001 Mulholland Drive, and 2006 Inland Empire. And then in 2017, Twin Peaks The Return, which that's the one I haven't seen, or I haven't seen other than the first episode or two. So that's the sort of major notable projects he's done. Again, he is a Renaissance man, you know, musician, author, again, painting, and then doing a large-scale live music project, Industrial Symphony No. 1. He made commercials. He was a comic strip creator, Angriest Dog in the World. He did it all.
He actually had an album just this past year too,
Right.
with a Cristobal in him.
And the nose, it turns feeling love, feeling sublime.
And he also produced all of Julie Cruz's albums and a bunch of different things he did. So with music wise,
He was always popping up in very interesting projects. okay, let's talk about what we've seen. Like I mentioned, I hadn't seen the Twin Peaks: The Return. I have seen everything else that I had just mentioned at some point. Like I saw Straight Story, but like once and maybe in the theater, and I don't have a great recollection of it. So let's talk about like the ones that stand out to you, and maybe ones you've seen and haven't seen. Let's start with Al.
So I haven't seen all of them. I haven't seen Dune, and I haven't seen The Straight Story, and I haven't seen The Elephant Man. I've seen all the rest. And I have to say, one that stands out, as I alluded to earlier, is when I saw Eraserhead on video at Mike's apartment. I had been working late that night, and then I came over and we started watching it, and I started falling asleep and then waking up and then watching a little bit more and then falling asleep and waking up. And I just thought, that movie is so confusing. And then later on in life, I watched the whole thing straight through, and I don't know that I had learned any more about the movie from the fully awake viewing. That's one that really stands out for me. Another one that really stood out for me was Wild at Heart. I remember seeing that and it having a big impact on me. Some of the language that I used for many years thereafter.
Peanut, I'm thinking of breaking parole and taking you out to Southern California.
Sailor!
You up for that?
I'd go the far end of the world for you, baby. You know I would.
Rockin' good news. Those toenails about dry yet, sweetheart? We got some dancing to do.
Rockin' good news.
Rockin' good news.
You're like a little bunny rabbit. You jump back slow.
All right. How about Chrissy?
Yes. What was your question?
The question was, of the filmography and maybe including the TV shows, what sort of had a big impact on you? Which one's down? And have you not?
Blue,
Go ahead.
Blue Velvet. Blue
Okay.
Velvet I saw in the theater, and it blew my mind. So much about it. The underworld stuff, the layers, the Dennis Hopper, Frank, the juxtaposition of music with creepy things happening, the violence, intense misogyny. I think I watched a lot of it like this. But it was also incredibly beautiful to look at and funny and smart.
Are you lied to me? You sure?
Hey!
Hello, baby.
Who is this?
A friend. He's from the neighborhood. We were just talking.
Oh. You're from the neighborhood.
Yeah.
You're a neighbor. Well, what's your name, neighbor?
Jeffrey.
He's a good kid, Frank.
Shut the up. Hey, you want to go for a ride?
No thanks.
No, thanks. What does that mean?
I don't want to go
Go where?
for a ride.
A ride. Hell, that's a good idea. Okay, let's go. Let's go. Get your f***ing robe. Raymond! Come on, we're gonna go for a joyride. Joyride.
How about Chris?
Yeah, Dune, is definitely the one that had the biggest crater impact on me. But overall, it's really interesting. It was Fire Walk with Me that taught me how to watch David Lynch films. And it's because of the blue flower scene, the blue rose scene, where she does a little dance. And then afterwards, Chris Isaak and Kiefer Sutherland deconstruct it. And it's literally that moment that made me realize, oh, this is a formalist piece. He's telling you how to watch his movies, that all the information is there. Even if it's weird, even if you don't understand it, you can decipher it. And, you know, that once I had that for Lynch, I could apply that generalist as, you know, and that's how I've approached art my entire life. And, you know, every time I do an art sort of deconstruction for my podcast or any writing, it's informed by everything I need to know is here. I just need to pay attention and find it.
Right. The interesting thing about Lynch is that I think purposefully he knows what he was doing, but he doesn't care what you take from it. Take something from it, but it's your decision. And it's, you know, I'll put clues in there. I'll put, you know, I'll have my dream and I'll put it on celluloid. But, you know, I'm not going to tell you what I, quote, meant, you know. I put clues in there, but it's your experience and you bring to it and you take it in. And that's what's great. I think that's what's great about him too. He doesn't have any, it didn't, sad. He didn't have any, that's the way I want to say it, some sort of agenda to make sure that his message is put through, you know. It's not like he sat down and went, I got to make sure people understand what I'm saying. He was like, he was like, he approached issues and ideas, not even issues. He approached his ideas and he translated them in his own way. And they're amazing to look at and experience. And the ambiguity is what makes it great in a way.
The film is the thing. The film is the thing. You work so hard to get, you know, after the ideas come, to get this thing built, all the elements to feel correct, the whole to feel correct, in this beautiful language called cinema. And the second it's finished, people want you to change it back into words. And it's very, very saddening. It's a torture. It's the film. The language is cinema. When things are concrete, very few variations in interpretation. But the more abstract a thing gets, the more varied the interpretations. But people still know inside what it is for them.
Well, I think it's interesting also with him specifically, where this week after his death, where people have been saying he was a singular director, and I think that's actually probably one of the first times in a long time where I actually agree that is something that is absolutely 100% true. Like there's not many directors I can think who are singular like him, who have this way of approaching art and approaching filmmaking and storytelling in the way he did. And I think it's very, I know a lot of people have used calling somebody unique and first time doing this or whatever, but I think that he really was one of the only ones that I can think of that really had that sort of impact on me and on film storytelling in general. And you could say it about different directors, but he really did his own thing. And it's going back to what you just said, Matt, about he didn't care. This is what I'm going to do. And he changed the playing field, I think. But when he did Twin Peaks, and I think Chris said that that's when he became an acolyte of David Lynch, I think that was impactful for me personally, because at the time where I watched it, I was in college, and I had recorded every episode on VHS and brought that with me to the dorms where I was staying, and every week the people in the dorms would gather in my room because I was the only one with a TV in the entire floor. So we would gather every week and we'd watch it. So there's a lot of stuff that goes along with it for me as far as like his work, how I was able to share it with other people, but also how they embraced it and how we all talked about it.
Yeah, Twin Peaks was an amazingly timed cultural phenomenon for us, specifically kind of you and me, because I was at film school as well, different school. But I remember, so I can remember, again, this is the hallmark of why David Lynch, or proof that David Lynch is indelible. I can remember, I don't just remember the movie and the scenes, I remember me in the moment. It affected me so much that I can, right now, I can call up the image of me seeing right after seeing Blue Velvet, for instance, or watching the third episode of season 1 of Twin Peaks. Like you said, Mike, the folks would gather in your dorm. The day that episode, which is the episode with the first red room and all that, I was actually staying in a motel near Carmel, California, because we were on a film shoot. We were doing one of our school projects. I think it was, I don't know if you remember the Murdering Real Estate Agent movie that I wrote.
I do.
Anyway, the day before shooting, we were at the motel at night, and it was Twin Peaks night. And all of my film major friends were like, "Oh, Twin Peaks is on." I'm like, "Well, let's watch it in the room." And I have a memory of sitting in the motel room the night before the film shoot, watching that episode live and going, and then after it done, we all just were sitting there going, "Wow, how do they let this go on TV?" I mean, considering what else was on TV and what our experience of television was. Like, we had seen art films and studied film, but we're like, how is ABC letting them put this on TV? We loved it,
But doesn't she look almost exactly like Laura Palmer?
But it is Laura Palmer. Are you Laura Palmer?
I feel like I know but sometimes my arms bend back.
Impactful culturally and personally. Like you said, someone mentioned, maybe it was Mike, I think, how it changed art afterwards. It changed TV for sure. You got a watered down version, Northern Exposure later, which is just like, let's take quirky, but let's make it safe for people. So you had a lot of that stuff going on. Like, I would say even like a Gilmore Girls and so things like that. That kind of quirky community show suddenly was a thing where they said, "Oh, we can be a little weird,"
Yeah, and dark TV too, because you had Wild Palms right after.
Yes, yeah, that's right.
I think even the exec who greenlit it said, we proved it with Twin Peaks. We can do Wild Palms.
Right.
Like, I think it was called Gun, which came out pretty soon, which was a show that was followed a gun through a thing that was violent, had a lot of the same themes. And
I do remember that. Yeah.
I think that was Oliver Stone produced even. But, it definitely changed TV. And when you look at things in the early 2000s in particular, you can definitely see the impact of the sex and the violence in television, in particular, once you start to get to the, the former cable Ace Award shows. And then when streaming came around, it's absolutely clear that Peaks was informing so much of how stuff was approached. And I think that has really changed. And I think that more than anything shows Lynch's influence on future generations.
Yeah, definitely.
The various Ryan Murphys of the world.
Yeah. For better or worse.
Personally, for me, as far as like impact, I think Twin Peaks, like we talked about, big impact. But Blue Velvet is the one. Again, my first theatrical experience with David Lynch. And this was 86, so I hadn't changed my major from physics to film yet. I was still supposedly going to be a scientist. But I went to see, the specific memory that I have, Mike, this is probably the first time I saw it. I may have saw it again with you. Was I went and saw it in Berkeley on, one of the theaters in downtown Berkeley. And I remember I was there a little late. And so I remember walking in on the blue velvet curtain kind of moving.
Yeah.
And I was like, whoa, okay, what's this? Anyway, what I very much remember is walking out afterwards. And I didn't know what to say. I think I was with my roommate, Bernardo, but I could be wrong. But I remember thinking, and I actually remember, you know, my friend was not a film guy at all. And I wasn't yet, but I loved movies. But both of us, you know, were just like, that was really weird, but that was really good. You know, and it was hard to sort of express how we felt or how we felt about it and why we felt that way. But fast forward to the end of that school year and me being kicked out of school temporarily, the school politely asked me to leave for a little while to figure out what the hell you're doing. And on that hiatus, I took some community college classes and I took a screenwriting class on a lark. And that's when I decided, oh, no, I'm going to study film. And one of the big reasons was remembering my experience with Blue Velvet. And the second big reason was in that class, we broke down the script and the film After Hours by Martin Scorsese. And those two things made me change my major from physics to film. My dad was delighted. And so for as far as personal impact, I think David Lynch and Blue Velvet is huge for me. Anyway, let's talk a little bit about, I want to talk a little bit like David Lynch's methods and styles. And I'll just start out by saying one of my favorite things about his films and projects, particularly his films, is the sound design. It's amazing, and it's something people joke about later. I mean, it's such a thing. Mike and I would, when we would joke around, we'd like say, oh, David Lynch, and we'd like dolly into your ear and make a rustling wind sound. That was like the joke. But just the use of the editing and the sound design for the emotional impact is masterful. Even in the very beginning of The Elephant Man, which I watched later, and recently I sort of took a peek at it, like the opening sequence with the dream and the woman being hit by the elephant and the way she's screaming and the way he does the frame rate to make it smear, all that kind of very, very artsy kind of filmmaking and technique. It's amazing. And I think he again, it is a singular vision. What are some of your thoughts about his style and vision?
Yeah, going to that, he knows when to use sound effectively and also when not to use sound. I'm thinking of a specific scene. I know, Matt, you have a specific feeling about the scene too, in Lost Highway.
Yes.
In Lost Highway, when Bill Pullman walks down the hallway into total darkness, there's no sound. I mean, he's not using any sound to really.
I don't remember if there's sound or not. I just know he's just looking into a black hallway and holds and doesn't,
Yeah, I don't think there's any sound in that moment. I think it's just he walks away. I'm
going to find it and I'll let you know. It's either no sound or just a tone. Again, use of music and sound.
Maybe there's a tone, but yeah, for me, it's like it's that is so effective.
Yeah,
and I agree with you because we've talked about this before on how that moment creates such anxiety in a person. I was literally like, I saw it with you or I think it was with you in the theater.
Probably.
And just I think that it was complete silence throughout the entire room. Like, oh shit, what's going to happen?
Yeah, it was just, the only sound was me squirming around, going, "Do something, something, jump out or cut, please."
Cut.
I think one of my favorite sound applications, I hadn't seen it until yesterday, in fact, is his short series Rabbits.
Oh.
Yeah.
And the use of the laugh track in that shows that, he understands what our expectations are, and occasionally going to slap us and say, this is idiotic. This is just stupid, and here's why. And that understanding of the laugh track in combination with a script that is brutally slow, but is also just engaging as hell. I think really the sound changed that entire piece. And it's Naomi Watts' most staid performance.
It has always been like that.
When did you go out?
I have known since I was 7.
It happens all the time.
Inland Empire is its own thing. I really like it, actually.
Yeah.
The first time, I have my stack of DVDs and Blu-rays, and that's one of them. But I remember first watching it and going, "This is long," and it maybe like a sort of an Eraserhead experience. But I remember, again, it's sort of like David Lynch. It's David Lynch without the necessity for, your 5-act script or your 3-act script. It's like, I'm going to capture emotion, and I'm going to capture feelings of terror and feelings of everything, and present it to you without the need for me to say, you know what, once upon a time, there is this person, and they worked at an architect firm, and then there's a conflict. There's none of, you don't need that. Let me touch that nerve in your tooth a little bit with this movie,
I'm a whore. Where am I? I'm
It's funny, that movie, I remember sometimes, this is a tangent, but on Halloween, I'd sometimes play scary sound effect tracks like in the house when I open for trick-or-treaters. And one year I played Inland Empire really loud in the background, and that was my Halloween when I opened the door soundtrack, Laura Dern screaming. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. Anyone else about sort of like Lynch's style and technique and how it works for you or not?
Now, I do feel like just going back on that sound design, what he does with it, even in his most commercial stuff, he still puts a lot of that in it. Again, I haven't seen Straight Story, but I have to go back to Twin Peaks, because in Twin Peaks, he was making it for a wide audience and people needing to see it on TV, and ABC approving this. Like you said, how did they approve this? But even in that, the sound design he brought to that was phenomenal. And what he was doing is like, for something that we're talking at the time it came out, and also that it's on television.
Yeah.
It's just insane to think what he was doing with that. And even though, like, I know it kind of got thrown off the rails by the end of the show, and that's okay. Once they revealed all they needed to reveal, and it continued, it kind of went a different direction. But and I know you haven't seen it, Matt, when he came back and approached it again with The Return, just a few years ago, it went back to that original feeling of why this was so groundbreaking. And I implore you to see it.
I will. I'm going to see it.
I implore you, just because I think it's just absolutely one of the best shows to, when it returned, I think it was 20 years later, 20, I don't know, 25 years later.
Yeah.
That it recaptured what we felt when we first saw it in the 90s, but also embellished upon it and brought something more to it that we didn't have in the past. Because, first of all, it's on Showtime, so they got away with a lot more too.
Yeah.
And that's also like something really critical to talk about with him, when he doesn't have the leash, he's able to do a lot more. The original Twin Peaks on ABC, he had some guidelines that he had to follow, but when he did Fire or Walk with Me, and then also The Return, there were no leash on him. He could do whatever he wanted to at that point.
Yeah, I think the second season of the original series, he was always a little bit separated because he was working on Wild at Heart at the same time, I think. And I think in the second, it's crazy to say that, like, the first season, I believe, was like seven episodes, or was it more? But the second season, American TV series don't need 22 episodes. I just think I know they want to have a lot of content, get those advertisers in there, but I mean, second season, I think he kind of was more hands off, and maybe Mark Frost was more involved, and then they strung it longer than it needed to be, and they pressured him to reveal the killer earlier. I would have loved if they never really showed who the killer was. And they said, well, the killer was society or the world, or who cares? That's not the point, or something. Of course, no TV. It's TV, and network TV is going to say, you need to solve this mystery, or people will be mad.
There's also something about Lynch's look that I think gets overlooked, because his cinematography is fantastic. He shot some of his own films, particularly his shorts, but I think there are very few other directors I can think of who were more hands-on in their art direction. And I consider Dune to be a masterpiece of art direction.
Fade Routh.
Emperor Shaddam IV. There are guild highliners above us containing many great houses of the Landsrad. Send them back.
How dare you speak to me in that...
You're speaking! You have some idea of what I could do. Don't try your powers on me. Try looking into that place where you dare not look. You'll find me there staring back at you.
You mustn't speak!
It established everything through the costuming, through the sets. You could say the same thing about Mulholland Drive. My Los Angeles, a place where I've spent literal years, is the Los Angeles that Lynch has described visually in Mulholland Drive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My idea of suburbia where I grew up is Blue Velvet. It's this visual signature that he had. And what's incredible is that that signature is different in every film. And yet somehow it feeds into each other. And, when you try to boil it down to syrup, there's something there. And I think what that something is Lynch's understanding that each individual moment is as important as the whole. And that he has gone through the entirety of his work, making individual moments that stand for a whole. And what that whole is sometimes gross. I'm thinking of the mouth in Dune, of the Guild Navigator. The ear, the constant shots of bugs, which I love.
What you said about him being able to capture the spirit of in this case L.A. in Mulholland Drive, that scene with the guy at the diner in the dumpster area, I jumped out of my frickin' seat. I knew something was coming, but that feeling, a cinder block, a wall that has a garbage thing in it, and he's walking towards it, and the camera's coming around the corner, and I'm sitting there going, okay, and then the homeless guy just encrusted with dirt coming out with the smirk. That says LA to me more than another director's shot of a palm tree. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And that's something that Lynch's films have in essence, because you have this sort of slick mid-century feel to everything until the moment he gets to the absolute most textured character in his films. And I think that is something that a lot of people ignore, is the sense of texture in Lynch's films. Watch Eraserhead and, I have to take a shower.
Yeah, I think also one of the things we haven't really touched on too much is how really good he is at understanding his work and conveying that through humor too. He really understands humor very, very well and what's going to work and make people. I mean, you look at his character that he portrayed himself in Twin Peaks.
Good luck, Chet. Sam, you stick with Chet. He's got his own M.O. Modus operandi.
Yeah, the one that always gets me is if I had a nickel for every cigarette your mom smoked, I'd be dead. Lynch's humor boils down to one statement.
Yeah. And I think that a lot of people don't really appreciate his humor as much as, everything else. But I think that he brought so many really funny moments to his movies.
Well, he has this sort of, as a person, he has sort of homespun hokey quality or something. It's funny that such images and scenes of distress and terror come from this kind of, well, hello, kind of guy. And
Exactly.
and his sense of humor is where that really comes out of, I think, is that sort of, I don't know what to call it. Is it a Midwestern humor, or is it just it's just sort of a quirky humor? Twin Peaks had a ton of it.
Where do you want these rocks? Put them right down there by the donuts, deputy.
Anyone for a warm-up?
Oh, yeah, you bet. Right
Thanks,
over
Missy.
here.
Damn good coffee. And hot.
So yeah, a great sense of humor. And I think, people don't talk about the sense of humor quite as much perhaps, but it was there.
Yeah, I would say one of the things about David Lynch that I love is that he is, like we talk about, he's a singular filmmaker, he's a singular director, etc. He's a singular person. Like he really, like his character shines through obviously in characters he plays, but I think I was reading an obituary or something yesterday, and there was a video embedded in the obituary. I don't know if this is from something or if this is just something he recorded, but it's just him like fixing his pants with a paper towel and some glue and some paint. And it's kind of mesmerizing and compelling, and just, what are you doing? And I don't know. I want to hang out with that guy.
Hello. And I got a paper towel in this knee, and I'll work on that today. I'm going to put white glue around the weakness in the material.
And there is a feeling I get in the David Lynch films where I both fear and yet desire to live in those movies. and I just think that has to come from him. That is the worlds that he creates are and as we were saying, they're quirky, they're humorous, they're terrifying, they're gross, there's just a lot.
Mm-hmm.
That if anything, if you can take away anything, it's just a lot.
It's a lot.
On a personal note, I just wanted to say that when I first moved to San Francisco, I think in 89, I think Twin Peaks came out in 1990. I really didn't have any friends. And I met someone tangentially who said, "Oh, why don't you come over and watch Twin Peaks?" And I didn't know what it was, but we gathered, I think it was on Thursday night, and we gathered at this person's apartment, and I ended up making, my greatest friends, who I'm still friends with, watching Twin Peaks. And then we would always go to this Thai place on Union Street called Bepples and talk about the show after, and, have damn good coffee and pie and talk about Agent Cooper and, the music, certainly the Julie Cruz stuff. And I forged my greatest San Francisco friendships and began my life here because of David Lynch. Also, as a young person, I remember getting the Village Voice and loving The Angriest Dog. And later in my life, as an art lover, I love his paintings. I think he's an amazing painter and a huge loss.
Well, and I do want to point out, Chrissy, that a lot of your work as an artist also, I think, is reminiscent of a lot of his humor too.
Okay.
I think that
you're my favorite person right now.
I really do. When I read your art and the jokes you come up with through your art. I feel like that is, first of all, my sense of humor, but also I do feel like that stems from David Lynch. A lot of what he's impact that he's had on your life, and I feel when I read your stuff that it's just reminiscent of that kind of art.
Best compliment ever. Thank you, Michael.
All right. So, I mean, I'm gonna resist the urge to sort of go through every movie and talk about what's great about them because we don't have time. But let me just say, anything else in closing, because I think I'm going to wrap up now. And I'll just say that he is a huge influence culturally and personally for me. There's, again, singular, used in the correct way, singular artist, filmmaker, and well, you shouldn't smoke so much is really what I'm saying, because emphysema, it's a bad thing. Anyway, how about, why don't you guys give us a final little statement before we close here? Let's start with Mike.
Yeah, I don't really have too much more to add, but I do just encourage, people listening here to approach his work in a way of seeing like this is somebody who really was trying to see the world in a unique perspective, from a unique perspective. And it's somebody who you may not necessarily always like their stuff. I don't like everything that he did. However, everything he did impacted me. And that's something to be said. I mean, I was not a huge Inland Empire fan. However, it impacted me because I still remember it. And that's the thing. Is like somebody who I don't have to like work to necessarily appreciate it, but I do have to see work that makes me feel something, and he always does. So that's all I'll say, besides what I've already said. So,
okay, Al.
I echo what Mike has said. Go out and check it out if you haven't. The one thing that I would add that I think of as I don't know if it's a through line, is that there are, like, even the most ordinary moments in his movies and television shows are imbued with something extraordinary. They're sort of hyper real in a way that I can't really effectively communicate, but there's nothing ordinary in his work.
Can I help you, lady?
No, you can't help me. No one can help me. I've tried driving with my lights on. I've tried sounding my horn. I scream out the window. I roll the window down and bang on the side of the door and play Public Enemy real loud. I have prayed to St. Francis of Assisi, St. Christopher too. What the heck? I've tried everything a person could do, and still every week I plow into at least one deer. I have hit 13 deer in 7 weeks driving down this road, mister.
I think that for me, Lynch, and I would put him in a category with Tarantino and Fellini and Bukowski and Warhol, these artists that I really admire. They're a measure for me, like when people like those things, and Rothko, they're probably my people.
Nice. How about you, Chris?
I think the most interesting thing about Lynch to me is that you can draw a tree, and each film being its own branch has its own set of influences that may not touch upon one another. I mean, you have Eraserhead gave us Guy Maddin. Blue Velvet, whether he'll admit it or not, led to Lars von Trier. You see Twin Peaks led to, I would argue, P.T. Anderson, even Wes Anderson, definitely show influences of specific Lynch concepts. And I think that's one of the things that, for me personally, I lost a guy whose general art view I absolutely will always have within me, and whose love of Bob's Big Boy I absolutely share.
Yes.
I did not cry until I saw that people were leaving at the base of the Bob statue that I had just been at a couple months ago. And, that to me is David Lynch. It is the absolute unexpected ordinariness being extraordinary. And I love that. But yeah, he's a filmmaker whose influence we're going to see for a few more generations now, I think.
Yeah, definitely. All right. So, before I forget, I am wearing The Owls Are Not What They Seem shirt.
Nice.
Which Mike gave me, I believe. Is that right?
I did last year. Yeah.
And I've got my Catching the Big Fish book with me. So, again, I want to thank all of you for taking the time to chat a little bit about David Lynch. He will be missed. And with that, I think we're going to wrap it up. Thank you very much. Say goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye.
Bye. Thank you.